Hello and welcome to Soul GPS. This is Ava, your coach, helping you overcome a toxic relationship, whether you're trying to prepare yourself to leave one of those or if you're recovering after, and to give you some steps that can help you get through the experience in a little bit of a smoother way, as this experience can be extremely painful. I know, because I've been through a few of those. So today I wanted to share with you an email that I received from one of my Polish viewers. I'm going to read it, translating live, so it might come off a little awkward in a few places. So forgive me. I hope I'll be able to try to at least to convey the essence of what this is. And I wanted to read this one because it is just so adequate to so many other messages I receive, and I think it's going to help answer questions that so many of you may have. And so this woman writes that she had just discovered me today. She's thanking me, you're welcome, and she believes that nothing happens without a reason, meaning that she found the videos, and so it allowed her to see that since about 15 months ago she's been in a very toxic relationship. And she knows that it is unhealthy, but she just cannot leave. She feels like she's addicted to her abuser. Her partner, looking from the outside, is a very successful businessman. He's a person who's very religious, very affectionate, very sensitive, but that's not true. He's even helping women who have been abused physically and psychologically. And when she met him, she fell in love all the way up to her ears, as we say it in Poland. She loved everything about him. And about 3 months into the relationship, the sweet and mean cycle started to kick in. And one day he would literally carry her in his arms. And the next day he would begin to punish her with silence and in other ways for something that she had done without her even knowing what that was. Every argument, every misunderstanding is, according to him, her fault. One day, oh no, she used to be wonderful but the best, and today she is not normal, childish, rude. She has two faces, she has no spine, and so on and so forth. He's capable of throwing her out of the house, of his house, throwing her out on the street, and the next day come back crying, asking for forgiveness. And she always does forgive, even if he left her when she had her leg broken, even if he accused her of having a lover, when he yelled at her, when he would say really nasty things to her. He's like a drug to her. Tells her how to dress. He tried to isolate her from her family and friends, which he had done successfully. It's a constant swing back and forth, and it's giving her all sorts of troubles with her stomach, with her moods. She can't sleep. She's constantly trying to do things the way he wants them to be, so he's happy. They don't live together because she's afraid what would happen if it went that far, but they do live very close by within the same housing development. And she knows, she feels that she does need to leave, and very soon, but she's afraid that she won't be able to live without him, and also how to do it when they're in such close proximity with each other, what to do to never let him back into her life, and how to overcome the pain, which the moment she thinks of leaving is tearing her apart from the inside. She's asking for help. She feels helpless on her own, and she's thanking me for being here. So, you know, it's such an ironic thing about the work that I do, because I'm very grateful to be able to help people with in their pain and share what I have learned about personality disorders and being around toxic people, which I have been like a magnet to most of my life. So I'm glad to be able to do that, but I'm also, you know, I wish there was no need for this kind of work, because it's so prevalent. It goes so deep in our world today, in our culture. Thankfully, more people in this world are good, and and not that many are, you know, without conscience, but still there's enough malevolence and evil in this world that I would say almost anyone at some point in our life is going to encounter it. And it always comes across, right, as being this really nice person. That mask is so deceiving. So yeah, so getting to the point here, she was able to pretty quickly recognize the sweet and mean cycle. And that's what happens to a lot of people that I work with, is that we become aware fairly quickly that things are wrong. And it begins with rumination generally, like you just feel like something's off, you know, and you don't want to let that in, because that would mean the end of the fantasy, the end of the beautiful vision you have had for this relationship. Because every time you enter a new relationship, but I think most of us do, we want this relationship to succeed. So we're holding on to the greatest vision of what this possibly could be. And so the fantasy kicks in, right? And we're good at that because many of us have been through the childhood training to accept abuse, have used fantasy as one of the outlets to disconnect from reality, which is too painful. And that's a great thing, but when it's balanced and controlled, when we do it too much, then we can literally begin to live in a very different world. I remember for myself when I was first discovering mindfulness when I was in my early 20s, and the idea of being here and now, and I had so much struggle with it. I was like, why is it so difficult to just be present? I became so aware of the fact that I couldn't be present, and then it took me years to really unravel the ball of wax and realize that that's one of the reasons, is that I have been using my mind to escape pathology that's been so prevalent in my life. And one of the reasons why we attract pathology is because we don't have self-defense skills, self-protection skills, because we feel guilty to say no. We feel guilty to disappoint other people. Because again, this is the way we're kind of wired. So as empathic people, so we need to learn how to do that. And that's what I wanted to recommend to this lady. And I already did in my Polish video. So she's probably not going to watch this one, although maybe. But this is what I would recommend if this is something you're struggling with, is that to use this event, this relationship, as an opportunity to find more meaning, more purpose, in your life, and to use this as a gateway into your soul, as a gateway into understanding the architecture of your mind, so that you can find what your weak spots are. And that's tricky, because when you're first going down the rabbit hole after the world has shattered, or the world as you knew it shattered, because betrayal is, I think, the most destructive I think event, maybe aside from a death in the family of somebody you care about, that we deal with. And the reason why I would say in some ways it may be even more destructive and disorienting, because when you discover that the person you trusted with your life either has cheated on you, has lied to you, or you question everything, right? You go from questioning, like, do I even know who this person is? Like, suddenly you think like you knew that person, and they're no longer the person you knew. You have to, everything you never thought about them has to shift, has to undergo a transformation. You ask yourself, who am I to have led this? Why did I, quote unquote, attract that? And that's also dangerous territory to get into, especially if you are prone into the new age thinking, and you're into the law of attraction philosophy, which I have a real problem with, because while I think that there is some truth to it, and you can watch a video I did about this, I think about a year ago, if you take it at its face value and believe that it's 100% accurate, that you create your own reality, then you can start to think of yourself like you attracted this, you created this. What does that mean about you, right? And that is, I never want you to ever think that way, because there is such thing as randomness in this universe. It's not all determined by your vibe, quote unquote. There are people out there who are, have all sorts of karmas, all sorts of agendas that have nothing, and I mean nothing, to do with you. It could be as easily explained in its bare bones. Of course, things that tend to be more complicated, as being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Such things do happen. So do not fall into the trap of thinking that you have attracted it, you have created it, you attract all these narcissists. This can happen to anyone. Now, the question to ponder is, why are you staying? What makes you bond with this person? Where is that pivot point of the trauma bond in which you can grab a hold of and tweak it so that you are able to recover yourself and extract yourself from the situation and build the spine, quote unquote, build the strength in order to be able to then rebuild yourself and go through this road of trials, through this incredibly difficult process. And I feel like what changes the game, what's changed the game for me and what changes the game for the people that I work with, is when instead of being the prey that's being chased by the predator, where the dark is chasing after you, you're trying to run away from the pain, right? It hurts so much, you're like, I don't want this, I don't want this, I don't want this, you resist it. Then it has double strength. But when you, and here's where the magic happens, is when you reach deep inside, when you find your own darkness, when you find your own anger, when you find your own fire, when you find your own power, and not use it as a destructive mechanism to fight everything that doesn't go along your agenda, which is what the narcissist does, or the person who has some kind of a pathology does. But rather to use it to fight against the evil, right? Is to look at this predator that's looking at you, and it's the predator inside. That's so difficult to do. When you look into that mouth of the abyss and say, I'm ready, I'm going to get through this. I'm going to meet that fear. I'm going to meet that sadness. I'm going to embrace it, bring it on. And, and then you get through it. And so it's like your body and your mind, they kind of go like, yeah, they take up the challenge. And again, it's not easy, it's difficult. And every day has its own challenges. Every second has its own challenges, right? Because this can be so daunting to face. And this is becoming a bit of a philosophical rant here, rather than practical guide as to how to get the person out of your life. We'll get there. But I think it's important because like it shifts the energy, and everything begins to respond. It's like your body starts to build this new sort of neural pathways, and these white blood cells or something you begin to mobilize the strength that you're going to need to overcome this. And let me tell you, once you overcome, like the person on the outside is basically like a reflection of something you're struggling with deep inside, which tends to be our wounds, looking at our wounds. Also, some people struggle, like everybody's going to have its own array of things. And I'm actually working on a program right now that I will have for you hopefully soon, that is going to go into detail as to how to go through this process in a, through like a 10-week, it's going to be like a 10-week program. So stay tuned to this, but I will announce it. But it's like everything mobilizes, and you're able to then look at all of the things within you that need your help. And it can vary, right? Some people really struggle with Gnarrk fleas. So it's the identification with the abuser part of the trauma bond, which makes them begin to behave like the narcissist. And these are the people who always write and say, am I the narcissist? Am I the narcissist? Because they do have a bit of a guilty conscience, because they allowed that person to manipulate them to the point where they became a little bit more like them. So tremendous amount of self-forgiveness is necessary to look at all of these things and learn to see it from the point of view that it was done for the purpose of survival. You had no other choice. This is what children do when they're highly oppressed. And I think that this could also be one of the ways in which a child can become pathological later in life. It's because they get beat down so much that they become exactly like their oppressor. So, but again, these people are not psychologically ill, just like the person who has the Gnarrk fleas. You still know the difference between right and wrong, and you are capable of calling the shots and making a decision. So we can't excuse them for good behavior. We can't reward them for wrong behavior. It is our duty and responsibility to draw our swords, to get our shields up, and not allow this pathology to continue spreading. So know that while you are fighting a war with yourself here, first you're fighting the war with the person, right? Then you're fighting the war with yourself. But ultimately, you can transcend it to the next level, and it becomes a fight. It becomes a battle that you're fighting for humanity, that you're fighting. It's the good versus evil. You know, the wisdom versus malevolence is the sorcerer, or it's the wizard against the sorcerer, right? We have all these stories across all ages that talk about this thing that's been plaguing us for forever, and it's present. It's been around for a long time, and so the reason why I talk about this is that when you're able to plug into a higher meaning in this fight that you're fighting, that you know that this is bigger than you, then suddenly it takes on a different kind of shape. It takes on a different quality, and then it makes it easier to face the pain. It makes it easier to go within and scan through the architecture of your mind and be able to figure out what are the weaknesses where you need reinforcement. And in general, the weaknesses for most of us is that we're too agreeable, we are over conscientious, we are over empathic, and it's not like, it would be so much worse if we were, you know, raging alcoholics, or, you know, like being over conscientious, over empathic. The crazy thing is that we are our own worst enemies, because we put the other person first and we put ourselves last. So we need to learn to not be so conflict averse, which makes sense. We were, because we saw either the father beat up the mother, you know, or something really horrible. And so we're like, I'm never going to do that. So you run away from the conflict because you get an instant visceral response in your body that tells you you're in tremendous danger. So all of that makes perfect sense. And that's why it's a gradual path. It's a slow undoing that you bolster up with self-respect, self-care, and all of these different practices. Okay, now let's get into the more pragmatic things of the things you need to do if you're living in a vicinity of a person who is having a tremendously destructive effect on you, and you don't want them to get back into your life. So what you need to do is, you know, set those boundaries and put safeguards in place, such as blocking them everywhere and anywhere you can, especially if you know that you are prone to forgiveness, like this woman was. She always forgives. He leaves her home with a broken leg. She lets him back in. That kind of person is going to have to take very drastic measures as to, you know, blocking them on all of their devices. I would say what I recommend to when things get really bad in some of these situations is that this person calls up the phone operator and blocks this person's number on that level. So it's not just on the phone, because it's really easy to undo that on the phone in a weak moment. Whereas if you call up the operator, you know, you have to wait, like, okay, press 3 to, you know, it takes you 20 minutes to get that done. But then you're like, okay, to undo it may take you another 20 minutes, and you're much less likely to unblock them. So that could be one way. WhatsApp, of course, that's all connected. Facebook, it's another one. You know, if you are on Facebook, a lot of people these days are leaving that social platform, and they have their reasons for that, very valid reasons. So anyway, so you do all that, right? You don't go back and scan and look at their pictures. You want to delete those off your phone. You want to delete any messages that make you feel sentimental. If they've given you poetry, books, or anything, donate them. Get them out of your life. If there's something that you really like, you really enjoy, you don't really want to give that up, then what I would recommend is put a box together, give it to a friend to hold it for you. If for some reason you think you may need their phone number, let's say that it's a person that owes you something, or I don't know, like it's something where you think that down the line you may need their number, or you can do the same thing, give it to your friend to hold it for you. Ideally, you don't want to contact them ever again. But again, there might be situations. I can't think of one, but if there is one, do that. Give it to your friend. And maybe in a few years, maybe when you're in another relationship, because that is extremely curative, right? It's like if you finally find, when you find yourself in a place where you feel loved, supported, and happy, then when you look back at that other relationship, at this other person, they're gonna just like, it's not gonna even have any effect on you. But that takes time. So be willing to part with those things. In the event that this person shows up at your doorstep, be ready to call up the police. Tell your neighbors that this person, your ex-boyfriend or something, is very dangerous. You do not want, if they see them and he asks about you or she asks about you, that they say, you know, that no, she's not here, or, you know, anything. So you can involve, if you have a good, you know, neighbor whom you trust, you can involve them in the process. So that's what you need to do. But I feel like the most important shift needs to occur inside, which is why I want to, why I took 15 minutes to dive into that side of things is, it's about asking yourself the question, what is the cost on you and your health, right? It's not worth it. It's not worth to hold on to something that is really blocking your development, because let's face it, that's what it is. It's much better to let it go, to sacrifice it into the fire of transformation, let it go, so that the providence or the universe or God, can assist you in removing this roadblock from your life, so that it clears the path for something greater to enter. And there are cases in which we give something up and this thing comes back transformed. And I've seen that sometimes with some family members. In the case of this person, when somebody is just so incredibly abusive, I would say you got to give it up for good. You got to let go of the hope. You got to face the truth that this person is incredibly toxic, and your biology is working against you, which is why, you feel so addicted, because it's literally a neurological issue, which is also something I'm going to get into in the course, because it's often not, I feel like it's not addressed enough, that these biological circuits that are within us get reinforced by these relationships, and they're the same circuits that have been active since we were children and we were suffering at the hands of either a sibling or a parent or somebody else, teacher. Trauma doesn't have to occur really early in order to have impact. It can happen later. It takes I think for Jackson McKenzie, he wrote the book Psychopath Free. Don't remember exactly what he said there, but it was 2 months or 3 months, something like that. The guy was happy-go-lucky up until he met this man who destroyed his life. And it was a short relationship. And he ended up in therapy for months, and then he wrote a book. Thank goodness he wrote that book, because that book saved so many people's lives. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether, you've been predisposed to abuse or not. These people are very tricky. They're very intelligent. They don't have the brakes that we do to stop themselves from doing something really awful. So there is evil out there. You do need to take steps in order to protect yourself and take good care of yourself. You got to ask yourself those deeper questions. Face your shadow. Face your pain. It's going to be an avalanche for sure, so prepare yourself for it, but also know that this event you're in the midst of, this hurricane you're in the midst of, yes, it will devastate some things. It may, you can look at it like a home remodel. It will take out the weak links. Let those go. Surrender yourself to the process, and then know that once it's quiet, once the storm passes, you will have the ability to rebuild yourself better, stronger, more aware than ever. And that is my wish for you. And thank you so much for watching. I hope this helped you. Please support each other in the messages down below. And thank you so much for your support of my work. And I hope that it's really helpful to you. And yeah, I will see you next time. Take good care. Bye-bye.